They say betrayal doesn't scream. It whispers. Mine came in the form of a half-hearted smile and a too casual, "Don't wait up. I've got a late dinner with the guys." I nodded, kissed his cheek, and watched him walk out the door. But something inside me twisted. A gnawing instinct, sharp and cold like broken glass under bare feet. I'd lived with this man for 12 years. I knew his schedule, his habits, his little tells when he was hiding something. And that night, everything about him was off. I sat in the dark, phone clutched in my hand, while the clock crept past 10, then 11. There was no call, no message, no update. Just silence and the quiet confirmation that the dinner was a lie. It wasn't the first time. 3 weeks earlier, I found a receipt from a high-end restaurant buried in the pocket of his gym shorts. 2 entrees, 1 bottle of wine, far too expensive for his usual solo takeout. When I asked him about it, he shrugged and said it was a team dinner. I believed him then. Or maybe I just wanted to. But that night, something changed. I wasn't going to ignore my gut anymore. I pulled out the small camera I'd bought months ago when our front porch kept being hit by package thieves. It was the kind that syncs with your phone and could be hidden anywhere. My hands trembled as I placed it just inside the guest room, angled perfectly toward the driveway. I had a feeling he wouldn't be coming back alone. I waited. Not just that night, but for 2 more nights after that. Each time he had some excuse to be out late. Late meeting, working drinks, just catching up with old friends. And each time I watched through that hidden camera, learning his patterns, noting the unfamiliar car he didn't know I'd seen. Then on Thursday night, my breath caught in my throat as a sleek silver SUV pulled up to our driveway. He stepped out, and so did she. Blonde, younger, laughing like she belonged there. Like she had no idea I existed. Or worse, she knew and didn't care. They didn't come inside, just kissed in the shadows of the porch light before driving off again. But it was enough. Enough to break something inside me that could never be fixed again. My husband, my partner of over a decade, was cheating on me, not just emotionally but physically, boldly, repeatedly. And the worst part? He thought I was too stupid to notice. That was the moment I stopped crying. The pain was still there, of course it was. But something else began to rise inside me. Something steel-edged and cold, the need for justice, for answers, for revenge. I wasn't going to let him walk all over me, pretend nothing was happening, and continue to play the role of devoted husband while he was sneaking around behind my back. I'd given him the best years of my life, stood by him when he was broke and unemployed, helped him build his business, gave up opportunities to raise our kids and support our home. And this was how he repaid me? He had no idea who he was dealing with. I was done being the forgiving wife. I was done believing lies told through a smile. If he wanted to play games behind my back, I'd beat him at his own. And I wasn't just going to confront him. I was going to make sure everyone knew exactly who he was and what he had. Done. I didn't need to scream. I had a camera. I had proof. And soon, I'd have justice. After that night, everything changed. I didn't confront him right away. I played the part, just like he did. Smiled when he came home, laughed at his stupid jokes, made dinner like everything was fine. But inside, I was watching, listening, piecing it all together like a puzzle I never wanted to solve. The betrayal wasn't just in the act, it was in the details. The sudden business trips, the unfamiliar cologne that lingered on his shirts, the way his phone never left his side anymore, even in the shower. He'd even changed his passcode. That, more than anything, told me everything I needed to know. He didn't care if I suspected. He thought I was weak, too naive, too devoted to ever fight back. But I wasn't broken. I was calculating. Every lie he told became another thread in the web he was spinning, and I let him keep spinning it, tightening it around himself. I started looking deeper. At first, it was his phone records. I'd never gone through them before. I respected his privacy, but respect only works when it's mutual. What I found made my hands go cold. Repeated calls to a single number late at night, sometimes right after he said goodnight to me, sometimes during supposed work meetings. Then I checked his email. He'd left it open on the home computer. Once, that was a mistake. There they were, hotel confirmations, payment receipts, a thank you note from a spa addressed to both of them. The audacity. It wasn't just an affair. It was a whole relationship. A second life. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, reading his flirtatious messages and her flirty replies. Miss you already. Last night was amazing. Can't wait till she's out of town again. That was me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the laptop through the window, but I didn't. Because I was starting to understand something. This man wasn't just cheating on me emotionally or physically. He was building a future without me, one hotel room and secret kiss at a time. And what made it worse? He was funding. All of it with our money. I checked our shared accounts. He'd opened 2 new credit cards without telling me. Charges I didn't recognize, dinners at places we'd never been, weekend trips I hadn't taken, gifts I'd never received. The betrayal was deep, layered, strategic. He was siphoning away our life, our marriage, our finances, our memories, and giving it all to her. And what would I be left with? Nothing but the broken pieces. He must have thought he could get away with it, that he could gaslight me, manipulate me, and quietly erase me from his story. Maybe he thought I wouldn't notice. Maybe he thought I wouldn't fight. But he didn't know what I was capable of. I had too much to lose, my home, my kids, my dignity. I wasn't going to let him rob me of those things just so he could play house with his little girlfriend while pretending to be an honorable man. No, this wasn't just a betrayal. It was a war. And I had every intention of winning. But to do that, I needed to be smart. I needed to gather everything. The receipts, the messages, the patterns, and most importantly, proof. Because the moment I exposed him, I wanted there to be no room for denial, no space to manipulate, no wiggle room to lie his way out. I wanted his world to burn as cleanly and completely as he had tried to burn mine. And so I waited. I studied. I played the role he assigned me, the doting wife who had no idea. But every smile I gave him was laced with venom. Every good night was one step closer to his downfall. And once I had everything I needed, I wasn't just going to take him down privately. I was going to let the truth echo in every corner of his perfect little life. At first, I thought it was just about the betrayal, the lies, the infidelity. But the more I uncovered, the clearer it became. This wasn't just personal. This was an attack on everything I had worked for, everything we had built. He wasn't just breaking my heart, he was trying to dismantle my life. We'd been married for 12 years. We started with nothing. When he lost his job 6 years ago, I worked 2 part-time positions just to keep us afloat. I raised our kids while he rebuilt his career. I supported him through every high and low, believing that marriage meant sacrifice, partnership, loyalty. But clearly, he didn't believe the same. He had been slowly transferring money out of our joint savings. I only noticed because I checked an old account I rarely touched, what used to be our emergency fund. The balance was half of what it should have been. At first, I panicked. Had we been hacked? Had there been a banking error? But no, it was him. He had been bleeding it dry in small amounts, hoping I wouldn't notice. Then came the discovery that shattered me the most: the apartment lease. It was buried in a file on his computer, innocuously named consulting contracts. A lease agreement, signed, sealed, and already active, for a 1-bedroom condo in the city. I checked the address. It was walking distance from her workplace. He wasn't just cheating. He was moving in with her. And when I saw the projected move-in date, my blood ran cold. 3 weeks from now. 3 weeks. He was planning to leave me, and our children, and start fresh with someone new, like we were disposable. That was when the stakes crystallized for me. This wasn't just about getting back at him anymore. This was about survival. We had 2 kids, one in elementary school, the other just starting high school. What would happen to them when he disappeared? When? They found out their father was gone, not because of a job, not because of a crisis, but because he chose someone else. How could I explain to my children that the man who kissed them goodnight, who laughed at their jokes, who promised them weekend pancake breakfasts, had been living a lie? How would I rebuild our life on my own? I had given him my trust, my loyalty, and the prime years of my life, and he was ready to discard me like an expired lease, quietly, cleanly, without confrontation. But he underestimated the one thing I never lost: my resolve. Because while he was planning his exit, I was planning my retaliation. Not just for me, but for our children, for our future. If he wanted to leave, fine. I wasn't going to stop him. But he wasn't going to walk away with everything. Not the house, not the money, not his image. He had built a web of lies, and I was going to unravel every thread. I wanted the truth to come to light, not just for me, but so everyone who ever believed in him could see what he really was. A liar, a manipulator, a coward. And I knew I had to act fast. Because the more I uncovered, the more I realized he was already positioning himself to make a clean break, probably with a legal team waiting in the wings. The condo lease, the secret accounts, the missing funds, it was all part of a long game. But while he was busy trying to erase me from the picture, I was making a copy of every lie, every transfer, every moment of deceit. I was done being a victim. Now, I was the storm. And when I was finished, he would never forget what it felt like to be exposed by the woman he thought was too weak to fight back. I realized early on that if I wanted to win this war, I had to fight smart. Not loud, not messy. Smart. Revenge isn't just about rage, it's about strategy. And I wasn't going to scream or cry in front of him. No, I was going to collect my evidence like ammunition. When the time came, I would hit him where it hurt. The most. His ego, his reputation, and his wallet. The first step? Lock down the truth. Not what I felt, but what I could prove. It's one thing to suspect an affair, it's another to have irrefutable evidence. I bought a second camera, this one with better resolution and audio. I placed it in my car, angled toward our driveway. I wanted to catch him bringing her back again. I needed clear footage. I also activated GPS tracking on his phone. Not something I did lightly, but at that point, privacy was a courtesy he no longer deserved. Next, I got a burner phone. I didn't want him to accidentally see anything I was doing. I transferred screenshots, photos, call logs, and email correspondences to it. I created a cloud folder, locked with encryption, and uploaded everything there as a backup. If he found out and tried to delete things, I'd still have it all. Then I started digging into our finances in earnest. Every bank account, every credit card. I created a spreadsheet and started mapping every charge I didn't recognize. I highlighted the transactions tied to her. Nail salons, boutiques, jewelry stores, places I had never shopped, but she apparently did on my dime. I met with a divorce attorney, quietly, without telling anyone. Not even my closest friends. I needed legal guidance before I made any moves. She listened as I laid it all out, then looked me in the eye and said something that stuck with me. Don't confront him until you've boxed him in. Once he knows you know, he'll start covering his tracks. So that became my goal. Box him in. I pulled our mortgage papers, looked into our joint business, and made copies of tax documents. I wanted to understand exactly what he'd be liable for. Turns out, he'd been funneling funds through our company to pay for this woman's lifestyle, mixing business expenses with personal ones. That was illegal. And stupid. Then I got bold. I messaged her, the girlfriend, but not directly. I created a fake profile. A woman in her late 20s, vaguely connected to my husband's line of work. I wanted to see how much she knew, whether she was complicit or clueless. Turns out, she wasn't naive, she was confident. She gushed about her amazing boyfriend, said they were planning a future together. He just needs to finish up a few things with his ex. That's what she called me, his ex, like I was a footnote in a story he had already rewritten. I saved every word of that chat. And then I did something even riskier. I booked a dinner reservation at the restaurant where I knew they met. A week later, I asked him to join me, told him I wanted to reconnect, that I missed our time together. I was calm, smiling, sweet. He didn't suspect a thing. He agreed. He probably thought I was trying to win him back, that I was desperate. He had no idea it was a setup. The night of the dinner, I wore red. Not because it was romantic, but because I wanted to remember that night forever, and I wanted to be impossible to forget. I had a private investigator positioned at the bar, a friend of my attorney's. He was there to snap photos, record the interaction, and follow my husband when he inevitably left to meet her afterward. And just like clockwork, after dinner, my husband kissed me goodbye and said he had to check in with the office. 30 minutes later, I had photos of him holding her hand in the parking lot of her apartment complex. That was it. The final piece. My plan was in motion, and I was almost ready for the reckoning. Once I had everything, it was time to move. From silent observation to decisive action. I started with the legal side. My lawyer helped me file for divorce, quietly. She advised me to do it in a jurisdiction that favored spouses who could prove infidelity and financial misconduct. Fortunately, our state recognized fault-based divorce, and the evidence I had gathered? It was more than enough to paint a very clear picture. We filed under adultery and dissipation of marital assets. The moment it was submitted, she placed a freeze on our joint accounts. He wouldn't be able to move money around or drain anything else without court approval. That same day, I changed the locks on the house. Legally, I could. He had unofficially moved out, and I could show that he hadn't stayed overnight in over 2 weeks. I made sure to document every change I made, sent through my lawyer, and kept receipts for everything. Then came the business. We had launched a small but successful online retail store together years ago. While he'd handled operations more recently, I still had access to our financials, and what I found disgusted me. He'd paid for her vacations, spa days, even rent through our company account. That was embezzlement. Fraud. My lawyer immediately filed an injunction and notified our accountant. We prepared a forensic audit request. His reputation in the industry, already fragile, wouldn't survive that kind of scandal. I also made a list of the most important allies in our life, our close friends, his colleagues, even family members. I didn't want to be petty or vindictive, but I wasn't going to let him control the narrative. So I created a calm, professional email, just the facts. I attached screenshots, photos, transaction logs. I didn't embellish. I didn't add opinion. I let his actions speak for themselves. I hit send. The fallout was immediate. Friends who once praised him for being a stand-up guy stopped responding to his messages. His sister called me in tears, apologizing for ever doubting my instincts. Even his business partner messaged me, saying he had a lot to explain before they continued any further investments. And yet, the most satisfying move was still to come. Remember the video camera footage? The one that captured him bringing her to our driveway? I took that footage and sent it, through my attorney, to his company's HR department. Why? Because he had listed one of our joint business expenses under client entertainment on his taxes. But that client? It was her, and she worked for a direct competitor. Conflict of interest, tax fraud, breach of contract. We didn't just hit him in the heart, we hit him in the wallet too. But I wasn't finished. I booked a private appointment with our children's school counselor. I didn't want them hearing things from neighbors or through whispered gossip. I explained that their father and I were separating, that I was doing everything possible to shield them from the drama. I asked for resources, support, anything that could help them through the transition. Because above all else, they mattered. And while I was tearing down the man who betrayed me, I was also building something better. A safe, stable world for them. One not built on lies. In the days that followed, my husband grew frantic. He tried calling, texting, even showing up at the house banging on the door. I didn't answer. He sent emails, rambling explanations, half apologies. He claimed it wasn't serious, that he got in over his head, that we could fix this. But by then it was too late. The damage was done. His mistress had gone silent, probably once she saw the scandal unfold. His job was in jeopardy, his finances were unraveling, and the carefully curated life he built on deception, it was collapsing under the weight of the truth. For once, he had to sit in the mess he created. And I was finally free. The final step was near. It was time to face him, not as his wife, but as the woman who refused to be erased. The final confrontation wasn't planned for drama, but it was inevitable. He showed up one last time, standing on our porch like he had every right to be there. The same man who once promised me forever now looked like a ghost of himself. Unshaven, wrinkled shirt, the confidence wiped clean from his face. I opened the door and didn't invite him in. He started with the usual performance. A sigh, a look of guilt, a weak attempt at a smile. Can we talk? I stood still. We are talking. He tried to spin a story, said he'd made a mistake, that she meant nothing, that it had all gotten out of hand. I watched him scramble, searching for the right combination of words to unbreak the mirror he'd shattered. I don't know what I was thinking, he said. I never wanted to hurt you. I felt stuck. I thought maybe I needed something different. But I see it now. I was wrong. Wrong? He wasn't wrong. He was deliberate. And now that the web was unraveling, now that he'd been exposed, he wanted to crawl back to the safety of the life he abandoned. I didn't even raise my voice. Instead, I stepped inside for a moment and returned with a manila envelope. Here, I said. Everything you need to understand exactly how this ends. Inside were copies of the divorce filing, the asset freeze order, and the forensic audit report. I watched his face pale as he flipped through the pages, page after page of everything he thought he'd hidden. He looked up at me like I'd slapped him. You were spying on me? No, I said evenly. I was protecting myself. From you. And then I handed him the last piece of the puzzle. Photos of him and her. Parking lot embraces, dinner dates, his hand on her thigh in that hotel lobby. You didn't just betray me, I said. You betrayed your kids. You stole from our business. You used our money to play house with someone else. And now you get to live with the consequences. He tried one last Hail Mary. You're really going to do this? After everything we've been through? I nodded. Exactly because of everything we've been through. There was a long silence then, heavy, like the breath before a final blow, and then just like that, he stepped back. No more begging, no more lies. Just shame. I watched him walk to his car, alone. No confident strut, no phone call to her, just silence. And in that silence, I felt something I hadn't in months. Peace. He didn't just lose his marriage. He lost his image, his business, reputation, his financial control, and most importantly, his ability to manipulate me ever again. But what I gained was even more powerful. I gained clarity, strength, a fierce sense of self I'd forgotten I had. In the weeks that followed, I finalized the legal proceedings. I kept the house. I secured full custody of our kids. The business was restructured, and I began the process of rebranding it under my name. The woman he left me for? She disappeared from his life the moment things got hard. Poetic, really. People sometimes ask if I feel better now that it's all over. The truth? I don't feel better. I feel whole. Because I didn't just survive betrayal. I transformed it. I turned pain into power. I turned deceit into justice. I turned silence into action. And he'll always remember the woman he underestimated. The woman who didn't scream, but who watched, planned, and waited until the moment came when the truth was undeniable. He taught me that people can lie to your face and still kiss you goodnight. But I taught him that karma doesn't always come quietly. Sometimes it wears red, and it knocks you down with a smile.